us grew up moving around a lot, so we were very accustomed to having to meet new people and make friends over and over again. But making friends as an adult is a whole different ballgame. When you're in school or university, you're in your classes with the same people, eating lunch with them, doing homework with them, so it's really easy to eventually form a bond too. Or you join clubs and organizations where you meet people with common interests and have that to connect over.
Now, it's okay to feel this way and acknowledge how you're feeling, but it's important to make sure you don't dig yourself into a hole. There should be a point where you get up and do something about it. The something is different for everyone though. If you aren't someone who likes putting themselves out there, that's okay. There's no need to be someone you're not. We have a lot of experience moving around, so we have found what works best for us. So for example, I'm someone who really likes putting themselves out there, and I don't really have a problem striking up a conversation with a stranger. To some people, that may seem very odd. But that's what's really helped me get through the whole moving around process and making friends. And it also helps me build my self-confidence for sure.
But as an adult, especially if you're new to the city or your friends have scattered all over the world, it can be really hard and easy to feel lost on where to even begin to find those close friendships. For me, it's always a little overwhelming and lonely when I'm in a new environment and I don't have anyone to ask questions or show me around or even go places with. But having been through the situation twice already just in the past 2 years, both of us have figured out what works for us, and hopefully you guys will too.
So when I moved to Calgary, I did not know a single soul here. And I was kind of in a pickle because I remember thinking to myself, how on earth am I going to make friends here? I don't know anyone.
Unless you're moving to a new city for school, where again, you're in that community environment with people your own age, you're probably starting a new job or going to work at some point. It used to be so much easier to get to know your coworkers at work happy hours or just during the workday, but since all corporate jobs have been work from home, it can be really hard to even know who you work with. Some of my first friends when I started my first job right out of school were actually through work, despite it all being online. We met each other through virtual happy hours or were placed on the same projects, and eventually we started meeting up in person. These virtual events can be really awkward, and it might be tempting to just turn off your camera and sit quietly the whole time, but most of the time, the people on the other side of the screen are just as interested in getting to know you as you are them. If there aren't many people your age at your job, which has happened to me too, try to reach out to people in other departments. Ask them for a quick call or a cup of coffee and ask them about what they do for work and try to learn more about their department. Best case scenario, you guys click and move on to more personal and casual conversations. And worst case scenario, they thought you just wanted to network and were looking to learn about what they do. If you're lucky enough to start with other new people, like a group of interns, really take advantage of that and get to know them too. When I moved to a new city for my new internships, the other interns I was working with were also new to the city and were looking for people to hang out with after work.
Everyone's work environment looks very different, so this may not be applicable to everyone, but reaching out to people your own age group at your workplace is a great way to make friends. In work environments, ghosting is also less likely because you're working together or you guys are in the same company, so they're low-key forced to hang out with you at least once. I started working in 2020 and I started with a start class, and we became really good friends pretty quickly. We frequently hung out with each other. We had group chats going that made our days just that little bit more entertaining. One thing about work friends to keep in mind is that it can quickly turn into complaining very easily. And you don't want your entire friendship to be based on complaining. Another thing that I think is important for me is that it's kind of important to reduce the complaining. One way that I found really useful is coming up with solutions, because a lot of times you get so caught up in complaining about your surroundings or your work that you don't really get the time to sit back and think about ways of solving them. And if you have a friend or a coworker who's there with you, helping you solve your problem, that's a really good way to build on a friendship.
Yeah, it's nice to have something to bond over at first, but you need to be careful about gossiping about coworkers or bosses because you never know what might come back to bite you. And you also don't want to cultivate that environment of negativity and have your entire friendship based off just complaining about work and people. Although I live alone now, I did have a roommate when I first moved out of college. I lived with the sweetest person and eventually we became really good friends, but we didn't know each other too well when we first started living together. But since we were both new in the city and didn't know many other people, we started hanging out a lot. It was as simple as, hey, let's go grab lunch at this cute restaurant I found, or I've had a long day at work, want to go out and grab some bubble tea? We also started some fun daily rituals like watching a Netflix show together every night while we ate dinner. I know some people like having a weekly taco night or just some activities to spend time together that you both enjoy. If your roommates do know people or have friends already, ask if you can join the next time they hang out. It's just another way of meeting people and you never know who you click with. Over the past few years, most major cities have started having Facebook groups for people looking to meet people and make new friends. We've both met some amazing friends from this and have had so much success. People are usually so friendly and come from all different backgrounds, from people who grew up in the city their whole lives or just moved from another country. A lot of people will post introductions about themselves, talking about their interests and hobbies, what they like to do for fun, and sometimes posting pictures of themselves. And then people will comment or message them privately if they think they have something in common and want to hang out. There's also Bumble BFF, which is commonly known as a dating app, but most people don't know that it has a friend's counterpart too. You basically set up your profile, mention a few things about yourself, add a few pictures, and sometimes people will mention what kind of friends they're looking for or what kind of activities they're looking to do. And then you swipe and see if you match with any potential friends. It's literally a dating app for making friends. With both of these platforms, it's important to be honest about how you present yourself. Don't say you enjoy something you don't just because you think you'll attract more people or that's what everyone's saying. But don't be super generic either. I can't tell you how many times people say things like, I like going out on the weekends, but I also like staying in. Like, yeah, so does everyone else. It just doesn't tell people what kind of person you really are. As with most relationships though, it's important to not get too attached too fast. Yeah, there are great people out there, but some people are just downright flaky or not upfront about what they're looking for. There's also a lot of people who are just looking to gain Instagram followers and will never actually be interested in meeting up. I've also had a couple times where I've actually met up with someone and thought we really clicked, but then never heard from them again. It's really easy to start doubting yourself and wonder what you did wrong, but honestly, a lot of people already have bustling social lives and aren't looking for more lasting friendships. This whole process really teaches you how to have thicker skin and not take things so personally.
Now, usually I'm a little wary of these type of groups because you don't know what kind of people there are on this. But one thing I really liked about this group, that it's a girls only group. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't have anything against guys, but I feel like having a girls only group kind of gives me a sense of safety, which I really appreciate. The admin does a really good job of making sure that there aren't any weird posts on the group. Essentially, in that group, what people do is that they create a post and introduce themselves. And in that introduction, you can keep it general and vague, or you could be really specific. But if you are going to be specific about your hobbies and things, I think it's important to be honest. So for example, I have noticed a lot of people here love to hike, and Calgary really caters to people who love the outdoors and love hiking. So I lived in Ohio before this, and my idea of hiking was very different. So I had to really assess the situation around me, and I've never really hiked in the mountains. So I made sure not to mention that, oh, I like hiking, because I don't want to represent myself in a false manner. And if you see a post you like, feel free to comment or message them. And a great conversation starter, in my opinion, it would be just suggesting activities you could do right off the bat. Like, for example, having a picnic by the river or the lake. I remember when I first met my first few friends on that group, we went and had a picnic by the river, and it was so much fun. Now, an experience that I've heard from a lot of girls in that group, and generally who've had to make new friends in a city during a pandemic, is that you get ghosted a lot. And I think it's important to realize that this is nothing personal and that some people just are flaky. And the first few times might feel a little weird, but you just need to brush it off and move forward.
Okay, now that you've met some people and have some potential hangouts lined up, what the heck do you even talk about with someone who's practically a stranger? First and foremost, know that it's completely normal for the conversation to seem superficial as you guys are just starting to get to know each other. If you're both new to the city, ask them more about where they're from and share a little bit more about your experiences. You can chat about your favorite movies, your favorite restaurants, or just what you like to do in your free time. Eventually, after the first few conversations, things will just naturally shift into more personal topics like your values or what you want from the future and so on.
With first conversations, a lot of people hate having the small talk, and I get that because I'm also someone who doesn't really enjoy small talk, but I did some thinking about it and I realized it's not possible to get to really know a person without scratching the surface. You need to get through the small talk in order to get to know someone. So I decided to shift the way I look at small talk, and especially for me, it can be really annoying to describe my background because I've moved around so much, so just explaining who I am is a 20-minute conversation. But now I look at it in a way such as I would not be the person I am without my experiences, and a lot of my experiences include moving around a lot. So that's just something that's necessary for me to share with someone. And after the small talk phase is over, and one way to get personal is by starting to talk about your personal life. So for example, if you guys are talking about finances for whatever reason, if you have any financial goals, you could bring up what financial goals you have. For example, if you want to buy a house by a certain age, bring that up, because that kind of gives the other person an insight on what your goals are. If you guys are talking about your job, you can talk about your dream job, or if your current job is your dream job, you can talk about that. And a very common topic to talk about is traveling. So if you're someone who wants to travel to a spiritual place, for example, bring that up. That will open up another conversation on your personal spirituality or your personal beliefs. So it doesn't have to be something forced. You don't have to bring up your personal life in a forced manner, but it can easily come up in passing during normal conversations.
It's also really important to be cautious about people who only talk about themselves. I can't tell you all the times I've had to sit in front of someone and just hear them talk and talk for hours and not even think to ask me questions about myself. It just makes me feel like they don't care enough to get to know me personally. Some people just want someone to vent to, others just get nervous and don't realize how much they're talking. But from my experience, it's also really important to speak up and voice your own opinion rather than just hearing about theirs. This is something that I'm still working on because I noticed that sometimes I'll just keep asking the other person questions about themselves to avoid turning the conversation to me and having to be vulnerable. Relationships at the end of the day are just about chemistry and energy. Really try to reflect and see if you're just hanging out with someone out of desperation or loneliness, or if they really make you feel good and you enjoy spending time with them. I know for me in the past, when I've been in that process and phase of finding friends, I'll have that one person who I'm hanging out with just because they're available and I don't actually connect with them and they don't really make me feel good about myself, but they're just my only option at the moment. But then afterwards, I noticed that they made me feel drained and weren't really my kind of person.
When making new friends, I think it's really important to not have some sort of a checklist that the person needs to check off. I think for me at least, when it comes to making friends, I really rely on my gut feeling. And I'm someone who really is in tune with my energy, and I can easily tell if I'm vibing with someone. So I think it's important to see if you and the person you're hanging out with are an energy match. You two could be very different people with very different interests, but if your energies match and if you guys vibe with each other, I don't think there needs to be a checklist for them that they need to check off in order to be your friend. So I've heard a lot of people say that they don't really have a sixth sense or that they can't really trust their gut feeling. But I just refuse to believe that is true. I think everyone has that innate sixth sense, and I think people just need to tap into that. And once you start tapping into your gut feeling, you will start realizing how so many of your decisions don't always need a logical thought process, and there are many decisions, especially when it comes to people and relationships, where you can trust your gut feeling. Making friends has no formula or recipe, unfortunately. It's really all about finding your niche and making the most of that. If you're a people person and you love large groups, honor that. And if you're someone who likes small groups and only likes hanging out with 1 or 2 people at a time, you should honor that as well. Most importantly, do not try to be someone you're not. If you're in tune with yourself and your energy, figuring this out is one of the most natural things to do.